Thank you for joining us today. I'm really delighted to have a conversation with Amanda Fleming, who won a scholarship in 2024 for her PhD research related to strategies to improve grape and wine production in non-traditional grape growing region.
Correct.
Hi, Amanda, and welcome, and thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to share a little bit about my research.
Excellent. We're so happy that you found the time to share your research. So maybe let's start by introducing yourself and tell us what really prompted you to engage in grape and wine research. It's not a usual field as far as academic studies. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I am, I guess you consider a non-traditional student. I worked in the industry, in the grape and wine industry for a little over a decade before returning to graduate school. And I returned to graduate school in Arkansas because I was working in the wine industry in Arkansas. And I wanted to go back to graduate school for a while for wine. I just honestly didn't think I could afford it, but I didn't realize that there are a lot of graduate assistantships and fellowships that support students and pay for them to do their research. So once I found that out, I thought, well, okay, I'm going to apply, and started working under Dr. Renee Threlfall, who's the head of the wine and grape research program at the U of A up in Fayetteville. And I really enjoy research. I like lab work, but I also enjoy connecting with people. Hence why I want to go into the extension portion of cooperative university extension work. And so I like having one foot in the commercial side and the industry side, but also one foot in research, and then be able to apply that research to help folks with their winemaking challenges.
So really, what prompted you in the first place to start working with in the grape industry, grape and wine industry in Arkansas?
Yeah, well, so I actually started working in the industry in California back in 2008 after I graduated with an undergrad in a completely different field of sociology and anthropology. And I'd always really liked sciences, but I also liked the social sciences. So it was, kind of, I wanted to explore sociology first. And then I have a family friend who has a vineyard in California. And I had visited it after I graduated from college and wanted to help them out with their harvest. And it's a small Sangiovese vineyard. And he said, well, our harvest lasts, a couple days, but I can connect you with a winery where you can work a harvest for 3 months and get to know what it's like to work a full grape and wine harvest. So I took him up on that because I didn't have job prospects at the time. I was pretty open, and I really fell in love with it. It was unexpected, but I really enjoyed the lab part and the wine production part and the horticulture part of it.
I guess it's the best way for anybody to realize this is for me or not. Being hands-on and working the winery, it's really the best way to appreciate the hard work that goes into making a bottle of wine.
Yes, and I was in Sonoma Valley, and that is like the heart of winemaking, one of the hearts of winemaking in the country. So it was pretty special.
Wow, what a great start of your career. So now you are a PhD student, and you were awarded the American Wine Society Educational Foundation Scholarship in support of this research. And this was sponsored by Virginia Wylder, and we thank her for that.
Yeah.
But can you tell us a bit more about this research that you are conducting? Arkansas, I'm from France originally, and for me, wine country, I don't think about Arkansas in the first place, but I've learned so much, since I moved. So what is the topic of your research, and how it intends to support this local wine industry?
Yeah, so my research is a deeper dive into what my master's research focused on, which was also looking at different strategies to improve grape and wine production in Arkansas. So, in Arkansas, we have about 300 acres of grape vineyards, and we have about 15 to 17 wineries. It kind of fluctuates from year to year. So not a huge industry, but it still does have an important impact on the economy in Arkansas. And we have a lot of French American hybrids, native grapes as well, such as Muscadine. That's a huge one, red and white varieties. So They are very pest and disease resistant, so we can grow them pretty well here. And my thinking was, with expanding my research on these different strategies, which I'll get into in a second, was that the major grape growing regions in the U.S., such as on the West Coast, they're very expensive to grow there. There are a lot of wildfires, unfortunately. So we need to start thinking about working with other grapes that are not vinifera and working in regions that are not the West Coast. And I know that New York makes fabulous wines. We have a lot of, great wines coming out of Ohio, areas up in that region of the U.S. But the South has a lot to offer in terms of their native and hybrid grapes. So it's just another avenue, another option for winemakers and grape producers to start looking at making wines down in this area. So my research focuses on looking at actually some different non-Saccharomyces yeast research on Chambourcin red wine grapes, which are grown a lot in this area and up in the east. And then also I'm doing a cool study. It's a co-fermentation study that focuses on co-fermentation between noble Muscadine grapes and Merlot grapes, just to see how color, flavor, and aroma is impacted. And we'll be having some sensory studies on that to see what consumers prefer. The reason we chose Merlot, people are like, why didn't you choose Cabernet Sauvignon? Well, it was very expensive. We brought in the Merlot grapes from Washington. The Muscadine grapes came from Arkansas. So we had to choose, a grape a vinifera variety that would be affordable for us, but also still had some phenolic advantages over Muscadine. And then we're also putting together a grape growing guide for producers in Arkansas. So there is currently not a grape growing guide for this region for Arkansas. And for surrounding states that have similar climates as ours. So we that grape growing guide will help current grape growers improve their production methods, but will also hopefully facilitate new folks to get into the grape growing industry here in the state.
Wow, so that's a great project, almost like from the vineyard to the cellar.
I'm working with horticulture, some hort faculty who are an extension on that grape growing guide, and so we're still working on editing that and hopefully getting it out this year. And that's been really fun because, I know more than the average person about viticulture, but I'm not a viticulturist. I'm an enologist. So I have learned a lot more about viticulture, especially in terms of native grape growing and French hybrids, because they are different than vinifera.
Yeah, it's true that, often the graduate studies, the research are either viticulture or enology or even, yeast research.
Yes.
But here you are really hands-on from, which might be, an interesting angle and a great training ground, because you really have a perspective of what's happening in the vineyard, how to help the growers to select, the appropriate clones, maybe, and cultural practices to do maybe unusual or untraditional fermentation. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and if I don't know where I'll be after I graduate. I may end up staying in the South or, a different region of the U.S. in extension. But, if I stay in the South, because we do have a smaller industry here, I feel like I'll have to be hands-on, not just with enology, but also with viticulture, have that knowledge as well, kind of wear many different hats.
Yeah. Being a sensory scientist, I'm curious about how the Chambourcin the Muscadine and the Merlot blended together. What kind of taste or flavors would you expect?
Have you had Muscadine before?
Yeah, a long time ago, but
it's a very bold flavor. So you wouldn't be surprised that even 25%. So my blend treatments are 100% Noble, 100% Merlot, and then we've got 50-50. 25 Merlot, 75 Noble, and then flipped. So you're not going to be surprised that at the 25% Muscadine, 75 Merlot, it's very much muscadine.
Yeah.
But it's nice because the noble muscadine has a lot of like bubblegum, strawberry, very fruit forward flavors. So
Mhm.
it adds that little, and it's higher acidity, lower pH than Merlot. So it adds a lift there to that blend. And then the nice thing about having the Merlot in the muscadine blends is muscadine can be quite bitter. The seeds can be quite bitter, so that Merlot
Mhm.
kind of tames it a little
Mhm.
bit. And we're also looking, so with that study, I'm really curious, what's happening with the anthocyanin development, mostly during storage.
Mhm.
How are the diglucoside anthocyanins being impacted? Those are the anthocyanins in the muscadines. Um, but how are flavors developing? And then is there a way that we can produce some muscadine blends that don't have so much sugar in them? Because
Mm.
here in the South, we produce a lot of muscadine, but it's typically made in a very sweet style. I think that's
Mhm.
partially the tradition, but I think it's a tradition born out of muscadine being quite bitter when it's
Yeah.
dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, is there a way we can make a muscadine blend that's not so sweet? Because muscadine
Mhm.
has a lot of good nutraceutical properties, and it's like, can we try to take advantage of that without having so much sugar?
Well, it sounds like, you'll have a lot of directions to really
Yeah,
transfer this
yeah, I
knowledge
think,
that you are developing with,
yeah,
nutrition and
yeah,
viticulture and enology. That's
yeah.
fantastic.
And we're setting up sensory for that. Going to happen in March. So I'll be very curious to see what the consumers think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it all depends on the context. If there is only one hint that I can give you, if you tell them, it's muscadine and they have preconceived notion,
Hmm.
maybe, you won't get their true
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
But
I think
if
we're
you
going to
can do
try
a
to,
bit of a blind tasting and
yes,
then
we're
an
going to
informed
do, yes,
tasting.
blind. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Anyway, it's not about that, but happy
Yeah. Just
to
a
help you
portion
out
of
if
it.
you have any questions.
Thank you.
But so you've been doing your research, in masters. You are in year one or two of your PhD.
Third year. I'm in my third year
Third
now.
year, sorry.
Hmm.
Was there any surprise? Because as a researcher, we have hypotheses, and we try to validate our hypotheses. But any surprising fact that you have already noticed that were not expected from your research?
Oh, so I'm doing an interesting, this is kind of a smaller study, a smaller chapter, but I'm looking at, I'm doing a research versus industry study on the use of Lachantia thermotolerance on Cabernet Sauvignon. So so it's basically like when you do research in the lab, it's all small scale. And then
Mhm.
it's like when you scale that up to commercial production, how much of that translates over? So I sourced some Cabernet Sauvignon from Washington, which Washington has
Mhm.
red wines that typically have high pH. And this Lachantia thermotolerance, it has this, its special, I guess, ability is that it converts sugars into lactic acid, so it creates lower pH, higher acidity. So it's a
Mhm.
really nice option for high pH wines. Yeah, I wanted to see, you know, I guess how much the Lachantia thermotolerance, does it have the same impact on the Cabernet Sauvignon that I'm doing in the research lab versus at
Yeah.
post winery where I was making it in a very commercial
Mhm.
style? And I I guess I wasn't seeing like the kind of results I expected to see. Like the Lachantia thermotolerance wasn't producing like the lower pH that I thought it would in either setting. So I'm perplexed by this because I've
Mhm.
worked on Lachantia thermotolerance with Chamberson and different treatments, and I see a vast difference between the control and the use of Lachantia thermotolerance on Chamberson wine production. And so I don't know if it's something with the Cabernet Sauvignon or I don't know. I have to take a deeper dive into that. But I'm like, does Lachantia thermotolerance just work differently on different varieties, hybrid versus vinifera? And so kind of
Yeah.
looking into that. And I'm a little puzzled by all of that. And just also making wine on the um, commercial side.
Mhm.
No, there's so much you can't control. Like I can control so much on the research level.
Yes.
And even then I feel like I don't always have a lot of control because sometimes equipment stops working or, you
Yeah.
know, so I'm my results on the industry level. I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting to talk about in my dissertation. What bent am I going to take when talking about this?
Well, I mean, scaling up, from lab to commercial
Yeah.
operation is always a struggle,
And
and
and it's like, I've done this Lachansia thermotolerance work in my master's. I want it to be applicable to people in industry on the commercial level. I want it to do the thing it says it's going to do with pH
yeah.
reduction. And I think it mostly does, but in this instance, it's like producing very different results than what I expected.
And that's the beauty of research.
Yeah,
You do your experiment, you have results, it's raise other questions, and then
yeah,
you continue. So that's
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, and with all of my research that I've done so far, I've always come up with like other
Mhm.
questions that I think down the line I'd like to pursue. So it just opens the door for more questions.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the American Wine Society
Mhm.
Educational Foundation scholarship that you were awarded this year, and I believe you received one in the previous year, uh,
Correct. Hmm.
which is
Which,
testament to the quality of your research and your studies. How receiving this scholarship impacted your studies or your career trajectory?
yeah. So, I it's really important for me to, I really enjoy applying for the scholarships. I like, it helps me just write about my research and get it out there and become better at all of that part.
Mhm.
But having the funding from AWSEF was super helpful because as a student, I don't make a ton of money. And, I have a family and my husband, he's a freelance illustrator. And so, we do okay, but having that extra money was just helpful just for the everyday living expenses. And also, I commute up to the university.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
that having that gas money was really helpful. So, when you don't have that financial stressor on you, it really helps you to be able to just work better. And
Mhm.
psychologically, you're just a little bit
Yes.
freer and
Mhm.
not having, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If I can have my everyday taken
Yeah.
care of, then I can think about the higher level things a little bit better.
It's a great way of putting it. And we are delighted to have been able to support you.
So
So
I thank
that's
you
really the
guys,
purpose.
yes, for all of the support.
And, receiving scholarship, may also open any networking or career opportunities. Have you noticed that, with our scholarship or any other
Oh, yeah,
support from
I'll
the
run
industry?
I'll run into people at conferences and they'll say, "Oh, you won that scholarship. Oh, I recognize your name. I'm at such and such university. It's really nice to meet you." And so I'll make those connections that way or meet other students too.
Mhm.
It could be faculty or it could be other students.
Yeah.
And so this, the wine industry is small, the research part of wine and viticulture, I feel like is even smaller,
Mhm.
So it's always good to connect with new people, but reconnect with folks at different conferences and
Yeah.
events. So
That's that's good.
yeah.
Yeah. So now we are in the period of application for the
Mhm.
2025 scholarship of AWSEF. So if maybe as a recipient, going
Mhm.
through the whole process of writing, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, if you could give maybe one or two pieces of advice to someone considering, applying, why would that be, you know, an opportunity for them?
Yeah. Well, I come from having had industry experience, so I think that kind of helped having a well-rounded story and
Hmm.
but I think anyone maybe not just writing about research, but writing about other things that make you interesting. Maybe if it tangentially connects to your research or your
Hmm.
interest in wine and grape industry, but to show that you're well rounded. Um, and I think the more connections and networking you can make earlier on, the better, because it's
Hmm.
important to have good letters of recommendation, good references, people who can speak to your abilities, whether that be in the classroom or in work that you've done in industry. Yeah, and to take your time, start early with the application process because, I revised my essays, and I had help with them. It wasn't like something I did the week before.
That's a great point. We open usually starting early January, and we close the application period at the end of March 31st. And I was a procrastinator as a student, but collecting, writing the essay, collecting the letters of recommendation because your supervisors, travel, etc. So you really need to also take that into account. So good advice. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
And, one of, my final question, maybe thinking of, the challenges of the grape and wine industry in the US or in the world right now. You mentioned, on the West Coast with the wildfires and the droughts and all the other challenges that they have. We see a decline in consumption globally and also in the US. But even, looking through these challenges, how could we encourage people to consider a career in viticulture and enology? And why wine is so important to you or to people?
I mean, I know we're going to have to all get more creative as industry folks and how we market wine and the kinds of wines we make, whether it be, even non-alcoholic, low alcohol. But wine, I mean, this might sound cheesy, but it's really how I feel when I open up a bottle of wine with friends and, you create your memories through that bottle of wine. People go to travel to different parts of the world to visit vineyards and wineries, and pairing wine with food I love, and having it over a good meal, and just seeing how wine changes in the bottle over time. I think that's really fascinating, and just all the different types of wines there are out there, different aromas and flavors you get. I just think that that's really the fun part about it. So it brings people together, and hopefully people are drinking it responsibly. I know that's not always the case, but I've really loved food since the time I was little. My grandparents were bakers and been interested in flavor. And I think having that horticulture part, I've always been really interested in gardens and growing, and then having the sensory and the flavor aspect. Wine just was kind of the perfect fit for me. Having that.
That's wonderful
too.
It's a great background, and it explained a lot. And
it's so diverse, you can
it's so
pick
diverse,
different avenues, within the industry.
Thank you for that. Is there anything you would like to share that, question that I didn't ask that would like to share with, potential applicants, with potential employers, potential sponsors?
I just wanted to let you all know, this is a kind of a special week for me, because tomorrow my family and I head out to Austria at the University of Technology in Graz. I'm going to be there for 4 months for a fellowship, studying under Dr. Eric Leitner, and I'm shipping my research wines over there, my co-fermentation wines and my non-Saccharomyces yeast strain wines, and we're going to be doing a lot of gas chromatography analysis, flavor chemistry analysis, and volatiles. So we're going to have some interesting results, I think, from that. But it's going to be a great experience being in Austria and trying all the different wines there and networking. I've never been to Austria, so we're very excited.
Well, congratulations. It sounds like a great opportunity and a great way to complement your work and looking at the flavors and looking back to the consumer data. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I just am, really grateful to you all for supporting my research and all of us students who are, trying to make an impact for the industry.
Well, thank you so much for what you do, and for wishing you great success for your continuing studies and research. I know it's, there are ups and downs often, especially during a PhD process.
And, PhD is for students who are just starting out in their master's or PhD. I will say that there are peaks and valleys, Some
They are.
weeks are good and some weeks are tough, but just keep powering through because a lot of it is about just determination.
Yeah.
It's helpful to be organized too. That helps a lot.
All right. Well, thank you for all your great advice, Amanda, and thank you for your time and for sharing your passion, your journey, and your insights from your research. So again, congratulations on your current accomplishments, and wishing you all the best for the future.
Thank you so much.